history was made in Arizona when Democrat Ruben Gallego was elected as the first Latino senator to represent that state. He narrowly beat out his Republican opponent, Carrie Lake, in Arizona, which ultimately went to Donald Trump in the presidential race. Yesterday, Ed O'Keefe sat down with the senator-elect and spoke about the Latino vote and immigration.
Do you think the Harris campaign fundamentally misunderstood how to campaign for
No,
Latino
actually,
votes?
To give them credit, the amount of effort they put into Latino outreach is the most I've seen on any of the campaigns since even starting as a volunteer.
On immigration, though, this issue isn't fixed. Why is the Senator Ruben Gallego going to be able to fix it?
We're not going to have trust with the American public for immigration reform until we fix border security first.
That is a very Republican position. That has been the Republican position now for almost 20 years.
The Republican position is that you give us border security, then we'll give you immigration reform. My position is we need to do border security, and then we have to fight for immigration reform.
That's going to be a hard pill for a lot of your fellow Democrats to swallow going into the next 4 years.
I'm the pharmacist about to give out some very hard pills in the Senate, to be honest.
Pharmacist, he says. Ed joins us now. Ed, so Harris, of course, underperformed with Latinos compared to Biden. What advice did he have for Democratic candidates in the future who want to try to win over Latino men in particular?
He implied, Adriana, that the party's doing it wrong because there's this presumption, and we heard this from voters and from other people in the party, that Latinos are going to always vote Democrat because of Donald Trump's tone and other things that Republicans have done. And I think the argument he's making is that is not the case. They are not to be taken for granted. And if you take them for granted, you'll continue to lose elections. He made a few different attempts to reach these kinds of voters in Arizona. He held a rodeo, for example, where a bunch of guys showed up. He would hold World Cup watching events over the summer at bars and boxing match watch parties as well, and would go and hand out breakfast to shift workers coming off the morning shifts just to greet them. They said, we've got to take politics to places that are non-political and to people that are tuning it out and introduce ourselves and not maybe make as overt a political point to them or appeal, but just show that we understand who they are, where they are, how they live, what time of day they're supposed to be reached. And if Democrats across the country do that, he argues, they'll have better luck next time.
Speaking of better luck next time, immigration, big issue on the campaign trail. In a lot of places, it mattered to a lot of voters, but Gallego didn't campaign much on it himself, and yet that proved successful. Why do you think that is? Because
to him, the argument he made, and this is an interesting one, is it's the unspoken thing that has to be dealt with. But there's no point paying lip service to it on the campaign trail if there's no current, real plan to get it done. And you saw him argue that what should be done first is finishing the border wall and dealing with border security issues, whether people like it or not, because it'll demonstrate to the country and maybe to those wanting to come here and the rest of the world that the United States is in fact serious about doing this. And that once that's done, once that issue is settled, the hope is, his hope is, then you can turn to the much more complex and difficult conversations about who gets to stay here, under what conditions. Can dreamers, for example, get legalization? But he says you've got to establish trust with the public that the government's able to handle security first before it sorts out who exactly can stay. That will be, as I said, a tough pill for some of his fellow Democrats to swallow, but he's arguing that's the way to go.
And among constituents, I keep going back to this Pew survey that finds that immigration was actually ranked as the 5th most important issue among Latinos, well behind the economy, health care, crime. And so this really isn't necessarily an issue that's going to motivate Latinos in particular as much as some other issues.